there, I'm going to try this other new series that won't be happening all the time, but it's something I've been experimenting with a little bit. Is the idea of films you saw as a child that were pretty much important to you. Now, I did a massive video years ago about talking about different films that were important to me as a kid, but this is much more like looking at certain ones in a bit more detail. And I'm going to start with Wrath of Khan. Now, these films I've actually managed to watch the projector so I can see them on the big screen. Some of these films I saw on the big screen, and some of these films I saw on TV, but they're all films that affected me as a child. So, it's their fault that I am who I am. So the first one is Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, which I saw in the cinema in the Circus La Scala, or was it La Scala? No, it was the Circus Regal. None of you will understand any of this stuff. There was two cinemas in where I lived when I was a kid. There was a big thing. There was a Regal, which was the posh from the balcony, and the La Scala was a small one. And the Scala lasted a lot longer than the Regal. Now they're both closed down. There's another different cinema now, but those the Regal was a big one. The Regal was one where you wanted to go and see the big films in, like Star Wars or Superman or something. That's where you want to go to see these films. So I saw Star Trek taken with neighbours or something to see. I can't remember. I know it wasn't my parents who took me to see this one. And the funny story with this one is we got there early and we let in early by mistake, and they let us in too early. So I actually saw the end of the film before I got to see the rest of it by mistake. So I saw that Spock died. Like, literally walked in the room to see Spock die, and I was like, I just wait till the film will start again. And it's like, I've just seen the end. It's like, and I was a kid. It was like, kind of disappointing to go see a first Star Trek movie. I was a bit young for motion picture, and then you find out one of the big characters in the series has just died in front of you. And it's like, and I was like 7 or 8 at the time, and I was like, it was like quite a shock. So yeah, that happened to me. Yeah, so this was a big film for me because it was that point where I was actually taking to see films at that point, which my parents were never big film people, so I never got to see that many. As I got older, basically by the late 80s, I just started to go see films by myself. I was old enough, I could go and see them myself, and I didn't care, and I've been that way ever since. Nice to go with somebody if they want to go, but if I can't if I can't go with anybody, I'll go with myself. That's what I do. So I was taking to see this one, and it was just great because it was that thing of seeing sci-fi as a kid, seeing Star Wars as a kid, or something like Superman as a kid. Now we get into Superman 2 at some point in this series. When you're young, they're massive in your head. They're massively important. I mean, that's why I think some of these films have lasted in people's minds, like well beyond the time when they should have faded away slightly. Like, I am of a generation that's very nostalgic towards what they saw as a kid. Probably in a bad way, because I think there's a lot of people, I think, who are so focused on what they saw as a kid as the only thing that is important, that it becomes annoying because it's like you have to move on. It's not healthy just to have that view of the world. It's like these things I saw when I was developing are emotionally so important to me that I can't move on. It's like, you have to move on, but you also have to have respect for what you saw as a kid too, and say, look, this was important as a kid, but it's also not defining other ways. So, which is probably why I talk about it, is because this film did have an impact. And of course they blew it with the third one, because the third one's terrible. But this one is really good. I've talked about all the Star Trek movies in a video a year or two ago, but this one is viewed as the best of Star Treks. I actually prefer First Contact to this one, of the Star Trek series, but this one is really, really good. I mean, basically, Khan from the old show comes back. He's been abandoned for years. He wants revenge on Kirk. there's a Genesis project which, as a kid, I thought was the most amazing thing ever. This idea of this rocket that could blow up and create this whole new planet, which was an idea that they absolutely threw away in this series after this. They made it not work in the third one, which was really silly because it was like, we didn't need to do that. It was an idea that you could have done things with. They never did anything with it because it was too difficult to actually use your imagination. And the thing is, this series went right for nostalgia after this film. This film was a bit grown old and trying to deal with age. And then, from then on, the third one went straight into nostalgia to stop Spock back. And that's all it was about, and it made the film really crappy because it was all about tearing apart everything from this film so the next film you could actually get Spock back. And it was like, that's the kind of nostalgia I don't like, is the idea of like everything you do in a story has to get you back to that feeling that you were there. That's what's happened with the Star Wars films, and it's just ruined them because it's like it's all about going back to Star Wars you saw as a kid and those kind of emotions, and it's like it just means there's no stories. Because I mean, remember when Last Jedi came out, it tried something different and got actually hammered. Whether you like it or not, it got hammered for trying something different, and it's like that kind of thing is a problem in fandom now. Because something different is really needed to keep the stories going. You need to advance in all this stuff. You need to advance, become a more interesting person. And if what you're watching won't advance, it means you're the ones who are influencing it. It means you're trapping yourself. And that's what this series did pretty quickly, is like, we're a cult as well, and we need to make all the fans happy by bringing Spock back straight away and doing all this other stuff and trashing the movie we've just done just to do that. And it became this thing that it's something that happens early on as you think something's great and then they do a sequel which is terrible. You know, everyone's got that. Everyone's got a series like that, and they loved, and then the sequel started to become worse and worse, and it felt that no one knew what they were doing in them. I mean, Star Trek was kind of one of the early ones for me for that. It was like, this number 3 is bad. But number 2 is so good, though. That's what's really shocking. It's so confident, because Nicholas Meyer, who wrote it and directed it, although there's a writer on it, I've heard Meyer just pretty much rewrote the whole thing to do what he wanted. And if you've seen Time After Time, he's very good at what he does. He came back and did Undiscovered Country, Star Trek 6, which was another highlight of the series, and he also did some writing in 4, another highlight of the series. Like, they should have just given him the series after this film and just said, do what you want. Just do what you want this. Because obviously it would have been much better for everybody if he'd been in charge of it. Because this thing was, he made Shatner actually act and not overact, which is, if you see the third one, there's so much true to scenery with Shatner on that one. This one is much more, he's still Shatner, he still overdoes certain things, but it's much more contained. The character's much smarter than he is in some of the other films. He's much more observant, and he's very human. That person has made a lot of mistakes, and it's a much better performance. And you're with him. Because a lot of times with Shatner, if they let him be too Shatner, you start to get really annoyed with Kirk. It starts to become like, oh, someone slap him. You know. And the better ones, when they've got him under control, the character's very compelling. It's just like when they have him under control, because sometimes they really don't. So, this one he really is compelling. So is Spock, because Spock's kind of now a trainer for these students. Kirk's trying to do that as an admiral, but he's failing because he's miserable, because he wants to be a space captain. He wants to go out and still be out in space and doing stuff like he was doing in the original series. And that's the kind of thing, because he's terrified of getting old. He runs into his son and an ex, and because when he was younger he was too immature, so she raised him and just said stay away from him. That's a really good relationship, because originally this guy thinks that Kirk's an idiot, and only changed his mind way later on, and they screw his character up completely in the third movie in ways that are moronic. So everything good in this movie gets utterly screwed in the third movie. So it's quite astonishing. And there's also wonderful. The Spock death is wonderful. Khan's wonderful. He's way over the top, but he's way over the top of someone who's lived in a bloody hut for a decade and who's gone completely mad. So it actually is. It works well because he's insane. This guy's he's got the tactics down because he's a smart guy, but he's also completely insane. So he's always going to do stuff that's utterly brutal and nasty, and you're always with him because he's so over the top, and it's really enjoyable. But he's a good type of over the top where you're enjoying him, but you know he's still a threat. So that thing is, he's always there. He's always causing trouble. So Kirk is forced to actually be inventive to deal with him, which is what you like in the hero-villain dynamic. You want something where both characters are smart. And that was one of the big things when I was watching the film. Is it was really, as a kid, it was really enjoyable because you never quite knew what was going to happen because both characters kind of were on the ball. Even though they were both played by actors who like to chew the scenery, they were both characters on the ball and they were brought down and needed to be brought down. And you Nimoy as Spock always being the kind of voice of reason beside Shatner always really worked. And same with McCoy, you get a sense of these people who are friends in this dire situation. So the whole thing works, the Genesis stuff works, the space stuff works because it is like a submarine fight in space, and the fights are exciting because people make mistakes and they pay for them. Kirk makes some really bad mistakes, but they're not mistakes made by an idiot. They're mistakes made by someone who is probably a bit rusty at his job because hasn't been doing it for a while. Khan makes bad mistakes out of his passion to get revenge on Kirk, but they're all mistakes made by people with certain motivation you understand. But they're also smart enough to try and move on from those mistakes pretty quick, and that's what's exciting about it. There's a wonderful scene through a nebula towards the end, as they're both fighting and they can't see each other, so they have to use their tactics around, and that really works because you're watching, trying to work out what they're going to do next. And as a kid, I remember being really tense. I remember as a kid, there was a film that always flowed really nicely because you're getting one type of film and then become a horror film when those slugs were in the air, which was really scary as a kid. And then you get some stuff, there's all scary stuff where all the people in this space station get killed, and then suddenly you go to this planet which is a paradise. So it changed around the imagery enough at every point that it kept you interested. And it's still a really well put together film. The themes are there, they're developed. You get to an ending where characters have learned a lesson, but they've also lost something. The idea is Kirk is immature because he hasn't experienced loss, and he experiences loss pretty badly in this film. So it becomes moving, it becomes the stakes. And I think one of the big problems was they jumped into the third film and tried to bring Spock back straight away. They should have left it for another film. Maybe have a film without Spock and then bring him back. Something like that. They needed to do something else. Because what they did with that third film was, oh. But that's the film, it did mean something to me as a kid. I remember it being one of those big, early, big screen experiences. That and Superman 2, the two big ones. I mean, I remember seeing Star Wars and really enjoying it, but it sticks less in my head than Superman 2 and Wrath of Khan. Even though I'm more of a Star Wars fan and I'm a Star Trek fan, this one stuck in my head. It's a really good film. If you see a really good film at a certain age, it really does stick in your head. And really, this one got my imagination going. So, it really works. It's a terrific film that really works. And it's well above the standard of that series. As we're going to find out. It's like, for a long time, the films were only good when Nicholas Meyer was involved in some way. He was the key component of the original cast series. So, that's me looking back at Wrath of Khan. It's definitely worth a review. If you can see it in a projector, it's definitely worth seeing because you can see some old-fashioned model work that's really nice. Old-fashioned sets, just an old-fashioned way of doing things, some matte paintings and things that are obviously matte paintings, but they're really nicely done and really expansive, so it's definitely worth a look. And if you're someone who's a bit more getting on in years, you may have seen it around at the same time as I did, and you may have the same a similar kind of experience with it. So I hope this is of interest to you. I hope you like the videos that are going to come forward from this, and I'll see you soon. Right, bye for now.